Over the years, we've seen some heated rivalries that have had fans salivating for violence. Often the build-ups can be just as entertaining as the actual fights, with athletes trading insults, taking any angle to get in each other's heads. As we know, when two step into the cage, only one can leave victorious. And in today's video, we dive into some of those moments in which fighters lost the war of words. I'm Noel from Fight Game Insider, and this is 10 times Trash Talk Went Wrong. Colby Covington versus Kamaru Usman 1. Colby Covington is known to create chaos wherever he goes, hence the nickname. So it was only natural for him to start running his mouth against destined rival Kamaru Usman at UFC 245. Being a championship fight, the stakes were already high, which only added to the heat. But it got even more intense once the press conferences started. The 6 months prior to this, the two were already going back and forth on social media, with Colby even going as far as involving Usman's deceased coach in his verbal warfare, saying, "I know you gave Glenn a heart attack from all those years you were ducking me, so don't worry, he'll be watching from hell on December 14th. But what happened on that fateful night was a sight to be seen, as what started as a closely contested bout began to slowly swing in Usman's favor. By the 5th round, Covington was wearing a lot of damage, and with just 50 seconds left to go in the fight, Usman secured his second knockdown and hammered away shots until the ref jumped in to stop the fight. Did Covington go too far with his trash talk? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Joanna Jajek versus Rose Namajunas. When fan favorite Rose Namajunas fought the boogie woman, Joanna Jajek, at UFC 217, I don't think anyone expected the drama that was to follow. Jajek was oozing confidence due to her 14-0 MMA record and 5 consecutive title defenses, which showed when the two came face to face. Joanna left no stone unturned when it came to trash talk, stating, "I will take your soul. You're never gonna be a champion," and a whole bunch more before kissing her knuckle and pushing it into Rose's face. Namajunas, however, couldn't have looked more unfazed as she should there, stone cold, not saying a word, and never failing to break eye contact. To the surprise of many, especially Joanna, Rose came out a calculated wrecking machine on fight night, overwhelming the champion with her accurate striking and ultimately leading to a first-round finish, handing Jajek the first loss of her professional career. They would eventually rematch, this time the build-up being more respectful, and with Rose coming out on top again, this time via a UD victory. Michael Bisping versus Dan Henderson 1. Bisping and Henderson faced off for the first time at UFC 100, and even though most of the pre-fight drama was to sell the fight, Henderson had to endure a lot of bullying and spiteful comments from Bisping in the process. It didn't help that he had to be around Bisping for a whole season of The Ultimate Fighter, constantly tolerating cruel one-liners from his future opponent. But just like Namajunas, Dan knew words meant nothing once you step inside the octagon. So, as he laughed off Bisping's trash talk on the outside, on the inside, Dan was planning a potential 15 minutes of carnage. What would follow is one of the most famous and violent knockouts mixed martial arts has ever seen, when in the second round, Dan dropped him, literally leapt into the air and landed his signature H-bomb onto the unconscious body of Bisping. The image of Henderson mid-flight eventually became his brand logo, although Michael would eventually avenge his defeat in 2016 when they rematched for the belt. Alexander Hernandez versus Donald Cerrone. Donald Cowboy Cerrone was famous in the MMA world for his head kick finishes and willingness to fight anyone, anywhere, and anytime. But a stigma grew where, if prior to the bout opponents were nice to him, Cerrone would ultimately go on to lose.
You stink, you're gonna lose, yeah.
Got him!
In turn, when his opposition would trash talk and attempt to get under his skin, more often than not, it would swing the other direction, as Alexander Hernandez found out all too well. UFC Fight Night 143 soon approached, and Hernandez did not hold back, insulting Donald at any given opportunity, thinking it was great mental foreplay for his impending victory.
I'm a winner. I'm going to win.
At one point calling him an insecure little lad, swinging on a saddle with a pop gun and a feather in his hat. Come Saturday Fight Night, things played out a little differently as Cowboy slowly wore down his opponent, catching him more and more frequently until a clean head kick landed, which marked the beginning of the end. Cerrone would soon finish Hernandez, handing him the first defeat of his professional career and a fat slice of humble pie. Ronda Rousey versus Holm. As Ronda's undefeated win streak grew, so did her cockiness. On many occasions, she failed to show respect to her opponents even after the fight, which sat differently with different people, but added to her popularity nonetheless. Things were no different when her 7th UFC title bout was booked against then also undefeated Holm. During weigh-ins, the two even got in a minor scuffle which had to be broken up. This ended with Rousey claiming that Holly was fake, that she would show her why she's the champ. After many interviews and opportunities to slate Holm, the pair would finally face off in November 2015, but this time wasn't nearly as flawless as their other performances. Holm had a clear striking advantage from the start and was finding the target at choice before landing the head kick that was heard around the world, putting the MMA superstar to sleep. Rousey went into exile and seemingly vanished off the face of the earth, radio silent for the best part of a year before finally returning to face then-champ Amanda Nunes. And, well, we all know how that went. Chael Sonnen versus Anderson Silva 2. It's no secret Chael Sonnen is the original king of trash talk, but he had to pay a heavy price for his words in the second fight against Anderson Silva. He'd already lost once to the Spider, getting submitted in the final seconds of the 5th round despite dominating Silva for the majority of the fight, blaming it on a misunderstanding of the rules in which he thought tapping out meant you lost that round, not the fight. I know.
Not bad, not bad. Now you.
The way I thought it worked was that if you tapped, you lost that round. So I thought what they would do is they go to a judge's decision, they go 4 rounds to 1, and we go home and I'd be the new champion. And if anyone had explained to me that that stops the bout in its entirety, I would not have tapped.
So really it's been more about just educating yourself on the rules.
When the cameras were on, Sutton never failed to create hilarious one-liners at Anderson's expense, such as, beating up Anderson is gonna be like eating Chinese food. 20 minutes after I do it, I'm gonna want to do it again. And nobody cares about Anderson Silva. Nobody buys his merchandise. He's the worst selling pay-per-view in the history of the UFC. Unfortunately for Chael, the only good thing that came out of this trash talk was the number of tickets the fight sold. As for his performance, he's had better nights at the office. Even though we started out strong, the Spider Anderson Silva caught Sutton in his web and finished him with a second-round KO. Jorge Masvidal versus Colby Covington. For once, Colby Chaos Covington wasn't at the receiving end of karma due to his big mouth. Instead, Jorge Masvidal took the brunt for his excessive pre-fight trash talk. Long story short, these guys go way back. Once roommates, teammates, and training partners, things went sour when Masvidal accused Covington of training with his coach and not fully paying for it, to which Masvidal had to fork out from his own pocket. Things went downhill from there and got even worse when years later, they were booked to fight. The two fighters gathered in the talk show to discuss the fight, but it quickly turned into a trash talk session. Masvidal was the one to initiate by asking why Colby couldn't look him in the face.
Hey, Steven. Go ahead. Steven, ask this to take the glasses off. Why can't you look me in the face like a man? Why can't you take them glasses? Because you got mad herpes? You're nervous again?
Masvidal then went on to say the universe is gonna correct that mistake via me. The mistake referring to Colby Covington's existence. Lo and behold, come fight night, we saw a whole 15 minutes of Covington grinding out Masvidal against the fence, giving him zero chance of implementing his stand-up game plan. In conclusion, it was a dominant win for Colby, a very tough night's sleep for Jorge,
I can't sleep.
and a rivalry that still doesn't seem settled, as there would later be an altercation between the two in a restaurant that ended up in a court case. Juliana Pena versus Amanda Nunes 2. Juliana Pena and Amanda Nunes were at each other's throats at the UFC 269 pre-fight press conference. Previously, Pena had been quite vocal about her plans to unseat Nunes from the top of the 135-pound division, but this didn't sit well with the champ. Confident coming off 12 consecutive wins, she proudly called Pena delusional, saying she loses all her fights and that she would never be a champion. However, delusions soon became predictions as Juliana shocked the world, turning in one of the biggest upsets in UFC history. We bet she remembered Pena's words, "One of us is gonna be dead wrong," while tapping out a rear naked choke in the second round. Amanda would go on to redeem herself, taking home the win when the pair met again, but going through what she went through, talking all that trash plus being labeled the GOAT, just to get walked through in the fashion she did, must be a bitter pill to swallow. Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov. Before their fight at UFC 229, Conor McGregor drew from every insult in the book when trash-talking his opponent Khabib Nurmagomedov.
That I don't actually...
I'm gonna put him back to box. I'm
I'm
gonna put him book.
The bang off you,
Hey,
mate.
you have to fight only box because
the
you
bang off you, kid.
can't
He went from race and religion to family and traditions in his pre-fight verbal warfare, which would later come back to bite him. The Eagle saved his mental and physical energy for the octagon, and on fight night, the story told itself.
Time to find out.
He unleashed relentless pressure and wrestling, which neutralized McGregor's stand-up game, dropping ferocious ground and pound whilst urging McGregor to talk, seeking answers for the Irishman's previous antics. And just like that, McGregor's demeanor wavered, and his bravado faded. He attempted to justify his actions outside the cage as merely business-related, but it was too late, as the crowd watched Nurmagomedov extensively humble the Notorious One that night. Ben Askren versus Jorge Masvidal. Ben Askren was like a trash-talking machine on steroids after his UFC debut.
He wouldn't say my name. It was like this little thing that he does. And George needs to know, I don't get full on a 3-piece and a soda. He better bring the whole damn family meal for that night.
As the American called out almost every fighter in the division. What further fueled his cockiness was his controversial win over Robbie Lawler, in which the ref stopped the fight thinking Robbie was out when he actually wasn't. So, his next opponent in Jorge Masvidal had a lot to deal with. Ben didn't shy away from calling out Jorge on anything from his intellect to fighting abilities. The outspoken Askren even talked smack about Jorge being a chicken. When Ariel Helwani asked, "How will you beat him?" his response was, "Any way I want." But while Askren had been using his tongue to trash talk, the heavy underdog Masvidal had been in the gym sharpening his tools, or more specifically, his knee. With a dramatic buildup and a potential title shot at stake, the anticipation for the fight was real. However, Masvidal didn't keep the fans waiting and right off the bat sprinted towards his opponent, throwing everything he had into a flying knee which, unfortunately for Ben, landed clean as he even leant into it, thinking he would get a takedown. This would go down as the fastest KO in UFC history, sitting at 5 seconds, and would mark the first blemish on the professional record of Askren. Are there other failed trash talks worthy of mention? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to be notified every time there's a new upload. Until next time, see ya!